Thursday, October the 15th, 2020 City Council meeting. Welcome this evening. At this time, I want to invite Reverend Larry Powell to give us the invocation. If you'll please stand, and following the invocation, we'll pledge allegiance.
Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, we seek your wisdom in this place tonight. We give thanks for a beautiful day. We give thanks for our nation and the freedoms we enjoy. Pray your blessing over our nation, over our state, over our city, and over the surrounding communities. We thank you for this council. Pray your blessing over them, each of their families. And we seek your wisdom for every facet of this meeting tonight. In the wonderful name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Face flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. At this time, I would invite the city clerk, Ms. Skelton, to do roll call.
Ms. Caruth? Here. Mr. Harris?
Here.
Mr. Tripp?
Here.
Mr. Olson?
Here.
Mr. Harrell? Here. Mr. Westcott?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Keller?
Here.
Mayor Harris?
Here.
Mr. Smith? Here. And myself. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Council, in your packet, you have the minutes from the September 17th and September the 29th of 2020. To have a motion to approve those minutes? Motion. Motion
Second.
for Mr. Brown, second for Mr. Keller. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. At this time, I'll invite Ms. Johnson to provide the financial report to the city.
September revenues from the general fund were $1,099,275, which was 1.99% below year-to-date projections. Tax receipts were $890,654. Franchise fees and permits were $38,767. Tax revenue comparison: if you look at city and county sales tax receipts year-to-date compared to prior year, the city is 5% greater than last year, and the county is 9% greater than last year. If you look at a comparison between the budget year-to-date, we have received in the city sales tax of $3,436,615 compared to a budget of $3,300,000. On the county sales tax, we've received $3,966,409 compared to a budget of $3,712,500. Which is a year-to-date increase for over budget for city of 4% and county 7%. September expenditures for the general fund were $984,555, which is 8% below year-to-date projections. $358,096 more received than spent. September revenues for the street fund were $993,413. This is new sales tax of $627,527, state turnback and ad valorem tax of $132,585, half-cent road sales tax of $59,871, reimbursement by Citicorp $153,240, interest of $19,232, and other of $1,069. Street operating revenue is 8% above year-to-date projections. Expenditures for September for street operations were $125,677, which is 13% below year-to-date projections. Sales tax improvement spending was $662,072 for overlay, Englewood, drainage maintenance, drainage projects, and the Prairie Creek project. September revenues for the Economic Development Fund were $52,435, which was new sales tax of $49,463 and interest of $2,972. September expenditures were $238,430. $214,050 were for police vehicles, and $24,380 was for the comprehensive plan. The balance of the various economic development funds as of September 30th, 2020, the 2003 fund was $1,512,789.49. The 2007 fund was $1,011,151.34. The 2014 fund was $1,011,945.60. September revenues for capital assets was $115,119. That was new sales tax of $99,632, parks $15,487, and interest of $707. September expenditures for the capital asset funds was $168,901. Airport drainage repair was $118,640. Intergov software purchase expense was $20,730. Aquatic Center glass doors, $3,200. Hickey Park scoreboards, $21,231. And the park's master plan was $5,100. Thank you.
There is no mayor's report this evening, so we'll move right into the departmental report. Mr. Mallett, report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick update on the operations at City Corporation. Try to do this at least once a year to bring the council and everyone at home up to speed on what we've got going on and how we're taking care of some of the money that's been allocated to some of the projects we have. Just doing a quick review of the last budget year. Our budget year goes from July to June. So this is a July 2019 to June of 2020 review. Currently, the Huckleberry Creek Reservoir is 5 feet down from full, and that's due to some of the wet weather we've had earlier this year, so we're in good shape moving into the fall with the reservoir. We had a positive finish to the 2019 to 2020 budget, approximately $830,000 better than budgeted. That's pre-audit, but that's going to be pretty close to being the final number, and that's due to, we've had an increase, about half of that's increase in revenues, and the other half's a decrease in expenses versus the approved budget. We're in the process of constructing the final 2 projects of Phase 1 of the capital improvements plan that was funded by the 2015 bond issuance. If you remember, I think the total bond issuance was right around $70 million. 49 of that went towards Phase 1 of these projects, and the other was to refinance some existing debt that we had on the books at that time. And then we are well into Phase 2 of the capital improvements plan through the $25 million 2018 bond issuance. So those Phase 1 water projects that half of the $40 million was dedicated to, all of them you see are complete, with the exception being the 1 million gallon tank in the industrial area, which is the tank that's being constructed right on the interstate. I'm sure if you've driven by, you've seen the progress, you've seen the giant tower. There will actually be a metal bowl tank at the top of that is being welded now. If you go by, it's being welded around the bottom, and once it gets done, they'll raise it up and they'll attach it and put the top on. So we're expecting the tank to actually be raised sometime at the end of November, with the actual construction being complete in spring of next year and have water in it. So that is a second tank over in the eastern industrial part of town that's been needed for quite some time. But that is the last project of the list of Phase 1 water projects. And then with the Phase 1 wastewater projects, you can see that all those are complete with the exception of the work that's going on. If you've been by on the backside of Tech, you'll notice that there's a lot of construction going on with relaying gravity sewer. It's basically from south of Tech all the way up to and across the interstate. So that project, we're fortunate enough to partner with you folks at the city to get an EDA grant of $1.7 million, which is directly reducing the cost of that project, and that money can be used in other places. So we appreciate the city working with us to get that grant funding. Phase 2 projects, again, to be covered by the $25 million bond that we passed in August. Funding for Phase 2 water and wastewater improvements. Again, it was a capital improvements plan that was approved by the board and the city council back in 2015. And it was included in the rate plan that was approved at the same time. So at this point in time, there's no reason to think we'll be looking to increase rates over and above what is already in the rate plan. And we are comfortably exceeding our debt coverage ratio of 1.1, which means we have to have a safety factor as far as how we operate and money in the bank to cover our bond payments and anything extra, and we're well above that, so no concerns or issues there that we see in the near future. Phase 2 projects themselves, about $5 million dedicated to water. We've got a project going on at the water treatment plant right now. $4 million of that's going to be dedicated to that project, and then $830,000 will be dedicated to the downtown water replacement. Both of those are currently in design. And the $20 million, 20 of the 25 is dedicated to wastewater improvements, continuing to work on the collection system improvements. The project going on behind Tech is a good example of that. The work you see going in and around here is also part of that $15.8 million that's in progress. We have a large manhole rehab, the second and last manhole rehab phase that's coming up that's currently in design, and then the wastewater portion of the downtown project. And I'll just say, while we're on the topic, and obviously the work that's going on around here, we've been doing work all over town for going on 5 years now. Very appreciative to the council and the support that they've given us. Very appreciative to the community and their understanding with the roads that we have torn up and the inconvenience that we cause. We do have issues from time to time. The city works with us. Public Works Department has done a great job working with us, and it's really probably been about as good as it could be. We're always going to have some hiccups, but very much appreciative of the Public Works Department and the city council and the community for understanding and being patient with us while we're doing the work in and around town. So we're almost done. We've got a couple years left of this type of work. Obviously, the big project downtown is going to be probably the coup de grace at the end. That's going to require a lot of understanding and challenges that we'll have to face when we get into, but there'll be a lot more information forthcoming on that in the coming months. The only other project outside of the ones I mentioned is a large project at the wastewater plant that will be addressing some of the issues that were identified in the master plan and also going to account and allow for some growth at the wastewater plant. So it's going to deal with some treatment deficiencies we have and address the treatment and flow so that we can handle the flow that we're seeing now and deal with some immediate issues that we're facing and some long-term regulatory issues that we've been dealing with. The estimated cost is right around $16 million, and it's going to be funded from several sources, one being the recently issued $6 million bond issue, which the city has again issued on our behalf. That is the third and final bond issuance that was listed in the plan of projects that was presented back in 2015. So we'll be done with those for this foreseeable future. And we have some earmarked capital funds to make up the balance of that $16 million that were generated. A good portion of that was generated from sales tax, the money that we were able to offset with sales tax revenue coming in that we were able to put back and have a surplus so that we can use for this project. We have two phases. Phase 1 is grit removal. It's nearing completion, and the larger portion of that project is in design, and completion is anticipated in 2022. Other notable items, we did refinance the first bond that I mentioned earlier, the 2015 bond issue. Was approved by you folks on September 29th, 2020, so just a few weeks ago. You had a special work session. We very much appreciate that. Took advantage of some very favorable interest rates at the time. Believe it or not, that's a direct savings of almost $160,000 per year over the payments that we had prior to that, which is a total savings over the life of the bond of $3.1 million, and that's just apples to apples savings. We didn't extend the life of the bond. We didn't add any money to the bond. That's just basically refinancing what we already had on the books. So obviously that very much improves our coverage ratio, decreases the chance that we'll have to come back for any type of rate increase anytime soon. So all that helps the financial situation at City Corporation. Just a note on COVID-19, we've been able to manage our work environment as you folks at the city has done. We've followed your tracks pretty much through the beginning of it and tried to keep our offices open best we could. We did go to strictly drive-through for a few months, but now we've opened up the lobby in the afternoons and allowed for people to walk in as needed. So we've been able to obviously maintain our critical infrastructure. My kudos go out to all of our folks and working overtime, and as people were having to quarantine, others stepped up and took their place, so we really didn't see any lapse in service, not only at our plants, but in the customer service area as well. We've had relatively little to no negative financial impact. We waived some fees, some disconnect fees. It come up to $10,000, $15,000 that we waived. that is pretty much sum total of the impact that we saw from COVID as far as our financials. So I know we're not done yet, and who knows, the worst may be yet to come, but so far we've fared very well, and I appreciate our staff working to get us through that. Second to last point, unfunded items. Just want to make sure everybody's aware that we don't have any funding set aside for a secondary water source, whether it be a city corporation solely or a regional water source that may include Tri-County and some of the other areas. We've had a lot of talk about that, a lot of not really proposals, but I guess feasibility studies on where we could do that. So that's something that's still on our radar, something that we will probably continue to work a little bit harder on now that some of the bigger projects are being wrapped up. Phase 3 water line replacements, there's still a lot of water lines in town, older lines that will have to be replaced at some time that we don't have any funding set aside for right now. But we'll fund those as best we can. Future capital reserves, any surplus bond money, once all the projects are completed, we can allocate to that, and possible future sales tax extensions. I would think at some point in time, if we do go with a regional water source, that could be a $50 million project. Obviously, that's something that's going to require special funding either through sales tax and or additional bonds, rate increases. But again, that's something that's well down the road, but something we need to be talking about. And again, obviously rate and fee increases if necessary, but I want to reiterate it right now. In the foreseeable future, don't see any reason to think that we would be back in here talking about raising rates at any time soon. So the last item that I want to bring up, I've got a special guest and his family. The back corner back there in the back bench, we have Larry Collins and Judy Collins, and I think they've got some family members. And Larry, if you'd want to come up here and join me real quick. I got a couple quick stories about Larry. As you'll see on the board, he's retiring this year, at the end of this year, after 50 years of service with City Corporation. So I think he is the model of consistency and loyalty. I can't tell him how much I appreciate him staying with us. He actually applied for a job with the city of Russellville. The city of Russellville owned the wastewater system 50 years ago when I was just a few months old, by the way. But the funny part of that is Larry's father actually applied for the job at the city's wastewater department. And before his interview, the day of his interview came, he got hired somewhere else. I don't remember exactly where he got hired. Nuclear plant. So rather than cancel his interview, Larry said, I'll take it. So Larry went to his dad's interview with the city of Russellville's wastewater department, and here he is 50 years later still working. Now it's City Corporation, obviously, but it's funny how things start. He at that time, I'm sure, was not prepared or trained for that job, but here he is as our chief operations officer 50 years later, one of the highest positions we have in the company. So I think he's a testament not only to work ethic and sticking with it. Very much appreciate his wife Judy and his family for all the support they've given him over the years. One thing I can say about him, he has always done whatever is asked of him and never complained. And again, we're going to hate to see him go, but I'm sure he's going to be part of our family for a long, long time. So with that, I'll provide this plaque to Larry Collins for an outstanding 50 years of service to City Corporation. Your commitment is an example for all to follow, and we appreciate that. As of June 1st, 2020 was his 50th anniversary. So if y'all will help me congratulate him, I appreciate it. Yeah. You're more welcome to say something unless you just want to go sit down. If you can say anything.
Yeah.
Here, I'll let you.
It's really bittersweet. I've got a great family here. When I started in 1970, at that point, it was the City of Russellville Sewer Commission. At that time, and in the early 80s, actually General Water Works in the city bought it out. And in mid-80s, we wound up with City Corporation. There's no way my success could have come about without the good employees that I've got beneath me, my family. It just takes everybody, and I am so appreciative of my time here. Thank you.
Thank you again, Larry. And that wraps up my report. Again, want to thank you folks and all the residents of Russellville for allowing us to continue to do what we do. We hope we do a good job and continue to make you proud of the work we do and the system that we have. So with that, is there any questions or anything that anyone would like to follow up on?
Oh, who are you going to replace him with?
We haven't quite got to that point yet. He's going to be a hard shoes to fill. So we're still working on that, and I'm sure there'll be others to be interested in that. So we've got a lot. That's the good news. We've got a lot of good folks that are more than willing to step up and take the challenge of the vacancy that he'll leave.
He's a good one.
He is.
Thank you, Mr. Mallett.
Thank y'all.
Personnel Committee. Mr. Harrell? Nothing to report. Thank you. At this time, I'll turn it over to the Finance Committee Chair, Mr. Westcott.
Thank you, Mayor. From our 5:30 meeting this evening, item number 1 was tabled. Item number 2 is an appropriation request from the City Street Fund Reserve, the sum of $8,447.50 to be used to purchase a multifunction printer for the Public Works Department, and we present that as a motion to adopt.
Thank you, Mr. Westcott. I do have a motion. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 3 is an appropriation request from the Criminal Justice Fund, the sum of $118,000 to be used to purchase 2 police vehicles with a complete equipment package, and we present that as a motion to adopt.
I do have a motion. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Items number 4 and 7 together. Appropriation request from the City General Fund, the sum of $14,424 to be used to replace the roof on Fire Department Station number 2. And item number 7 was an appropriation request from the City General Fund, the sum of $18,786 to be used to replace the roof on Fire Department Station number 4. And we present those as a motion to adopt.
Okay, I do have a motion for items number 4 and item number 7. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 6 has been removed. Items number 8 and 9 were tabled this evening. Moving on to our finance agenda from last,
Mr. Westcott,
Is
item
that-
number 5,
item number 5. What did I miss?
top of the,
Oh, missed that one entirely. Item number 5 is consideration of the reimbursement request from the Arkansas Valley Alliance for Economic Development in the amount of $6,589.52, and we present that as a motion to adopt.
do you have a motion? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, moving into our agenda from last Tuesday evening, item number 1 is an appropriation request from the General Fund year-end carry-forward balance, the sum of $7,755 to repair some air conditioning units here at City Hall, and we present that as a motion to adopt.
Thank you for the motion. Do I have any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 2 is consideration of the third quarter reimbursement request from the Russellville Boys and Girls Club in the amount of $15,377.67, and we present that as a motion to adopt.
Thank you for that motion. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 3 is consideration of the third quarter reimbursement request from Main Street Russellville in the amount of $15,000, and we present that as a motion to adopt.
Do you have a motion to adopt item number 3? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 4 is an appropriation from the Street Fund Sales Tax Improvements, the sum of $180,000, or $839.45. This is a pass-through for the reimbursement received from City Corp for paving and striping, and we present that as a motion to adopt.
I do have a motion to adopt. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 5 is an appropriation request from the City Capital Asset Fund, the sum of $23,642.47 to be used to purchase the pre-manufactured pavilion for the James School Park project, and this comes from the Parks and Rec portion of the current 3/8 sales tax, and we present that as a motion to adopt.
Thank you for that motion. On item number 5, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 6, this is an appropriation request from the City Police Training Fund, the sum of $11,105 to be used for the K-9 unit project. This is a pass-through as well, and we present that as a motion to adopt.
I understand this is a motion to be passed through. Any discussion?
I'd like to know where the dogs are coming from.
I understand you would like to know where the dogs are coming from. Is
Yeah.
Is Chief Ewing still here? At this time, we do not have, I think we've got a line on those, but I couldn't give you that answer. I'll follow up with you at a later date. Can you step up to the mic, Mrs. Johnson?
Some may come from Germany and different places.
No, these are local, inside the state of Arkansas, and they went and looked at 2 of the strongest potential today, took the 2 officers that are going to be receiving them, and it was a really good exchange. So their potential to go into training on the 9th of November.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 7 is an appropriation from the general fund, the sum of $8,875, and this is also a pass-through, if I'm not mistaken, for some sale of assets, and we present that as a motion to adopt.
Okay, we have a motion on item number 7. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 8 is consideration of an ordinance establishing the City of Russellville, Arkansas Municipal Ambulance Service. And we present this as a motion to suspend the rules, dispense with the reading requirement, read the first of 3 readings by title with a short explanation.
I have a motion to suspend the rules, dispense with the reading requirements, read by title only for the first of 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Roll call.
Mr. Westcott?
Yes.
Ms. Caruth? Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
No.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
No.
It's 5-3 yeses.
5-3, motion passes. 2/3. Okay, and I will vote yes in the affirmative.
So 6:30.
An ordinance establishing a municipal ambulance service pursuant to the authority granted the City of Russellville, Arkansas under the Ambulance Licensing Act, defining terms, setting supervision of the municipal ambulance service under the Russellville Fire Department, setting collections and rates, declaring certain acts to be unlawful, providing certain exemptions to this ordinance, prescribing penalties for violation of this ordinance, and prescribing other matters pertaining thereto. This ordinance would define the terms necessary for establishing a municipal ambulance service, invokes the authority to do so under the state laws. The state of Arkansas declares its general purpose intent to set a municipal ambulance service for the city of Russellville, Arkansas, prescribes unlawful acts and penalties and rates to be set by a separate resolution, and sets out penalties for violation of the ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Motion to discuss.
I do have a motion to allow discussion on item number 8. Have a second?
Second.
Have a second from,
Mr.
who is that?
Mr. Harris, second.
Mr. Harris.
Mr. Harris. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We do we have some individuals signed up to speak this
I
evening?
think Ben was the only one, and he said if you needed to.
Okay. I do have some information from the Chief Sloan to present to the council in relation to this item.
Now, y'all know that each one of our meetings with you guys took a minimum of 2 hours, if not 5 hours. So bear with us on trying to present this as quickly as possible, just an overview, and obviously y'all can have questions afterwards. Richard's going to start out.
Sure, I'm just going to do a quick intro and allow the experts to step in here, Chief Sloan, Chief Vic. We were asked to do a public presentation, very brief one, kind of hitting the highlights. And what I wanted to do is, first of all, I just wanted to express my gratitude. For the last 6 weeks, we've had the privilege of meeting individually with each of you. And not only did you meet with us one-on-one, but you also answered calls. And when we left voicemails, you returned the calls and absolutely were gracious and attentive. If you think about that, okay, 100% meeting with us, talking with us, spending time, asking questions, that's a healthy example. That's an example of a healthy work relationship between city officials and a department. And I just want to say that I just want to make that public statement because I really appreciate that. One of the things we focused on is core values of why we're here, right? Our mission. We talked about our mission. It's a commitment to the betterment and enhancement of the health and safety and quality of the citizens of Russellville. I took the two missions, City of Russellville and the Fire Department, using the term betterment in the city's mission and enhancement in the fire department's mission, and I pulled it together. We didn't talk about status quo. We talked about those two missions and really why we were here. If we take the betterment and the enhancement and we look to see what the state law talks about, and it talks about it basically it mirrors that. And it's mirrored in Arkansas Code 114-266-101, that authorizes you as a city council to own and regulate EMS in the community as you deem proper for the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens. So then it goes back to for the health, safety, and welfare. So our mission statements and state law are all in concert. So Chief Sloan's going to talk about this feasibility study, and it was something that took a solid 15 months. And he's going to talk to you about it being feasible. He's going to talk to you about it being self-sustaining. He's going to talk to you about it being focused on dedicated ambulances in the city of Russellville. It's going to talk to you about the user having a reduced cost if you actually use the service. He also wants to talk to you about the proposed partnership with Polk County EMS, which will prove to be an enhancement to EMS services throughout the whole county. One thing I can tell you, I've been part of this thing for a long time. We have been super transparent. Every time a question came up, we tried to be as transparent as we could and answer every question. We've done our due diligence. We tallied around 50 hours of meeting. We met with not only city council members, but we met with stakeholders in the community. We addressed questions, and we talked diligently about fire-based EMS in this community. We also, I believe, we absolutely have an acceptable quality management program. Chief Vic can talk to you about that. It's exceptional. So with that, I'll just finish up and let you know that Chief Sloan promised me that if I extend my time period up here, he's no longer going to allow me to be at the podium for the rest of my career or his. So, Chief, I'm going to yield to you. Thanks. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you, Richard. So first off, let me address why fire-based EMS. Why were we even asked to do this study in the first place? Well, if you look across the nation, it's very common. In fact, you can look at 200 of the most populated areas in the country. 97% of those run fire-based EMS and EMS transport. The reason all goes back to efficiency. It's pretty hard model to argue with as far as efficiency, and the reason is because the infrastructure is already there. We're firefighters. We have stations strategically located throughout the cities. We have personnel that are trained in many different areas, including EMS. All of our firefighters are at least EMT. A good number of them are paramedic. And so really when you look at, and that's true across the country as a whole, when you look at that model and you can spread that overhead out across several services that you provide, that's where that efficiency comes in. You know, we have response times because these stations are strategically located that are hard to compete with. It's hard for an organization who only provides one service to compete in this efficiency area. So that's why. The other thing I want to point out is that the Russellville Fire Department has been providing EMS. It's been part of our core mission since 1994. So when we're talking about this and we're talking about efficiency, we're talking about adding this service, remember that this is an incremental change. We're running the vast majority of these calls already. We're dealing with a lot of the questions that you guys have asked over this period of time, and we have been since 1994. Across the nation, even in the state of Arkansas, you've got Northwest Arkansas, communities across the state that have moved towards or in the process of moving towards fire-based EMS transport. And this efficiency is the reason why. It's just really hard to compete with. So I talked about the strategic location of the stations. If you look at a 6-year average of our response times within the community of Russellville. Now this is all emergency calls. We didn't take out any outliers either way. We have an average response time of 4 minutes, 21 seconds. The national average, suburban communities, is 7 minutes, 42 seconds. So you can see that response time is key in EMS, and of course fire we know, but EMS, it can be absolutely critical. So how critical? How important is time? Well, you know, we started this first responder program back in '94 because of this very reason, that we can be to your front door from the time that we are notified in 4 minutes, 21 seconds on average. And we can start that critical intervention. Well, it goes beyond that. There are examples, there are calls every year that it's not just how important that initial intervention is, it's also important how soon you get to definitive care. Some examples, of course, obvious examples are like stroke. An untreated stroke victim, their brain ages 30,000 times the normal rate for every minute that goes by. And there's not a lot that you can do in the field. What they need is they need to get to that ER. They need to get to this advanced stroke process that's been put in place, and they need that clot buster. Minutes count. Seconds count. It can make the difference in whether that patient walks out of that hospital or if he has long-term impairment. It can make that difference. cardiac incidents that don't result in cardiac arrest. Someone that has a heart attack, again, they're not quite in cardiac arrest, but what they need is they need to get to intervention quickly. They need to get to that cath lab. They need a stent or a shunt. It can make the difference. So going back to the study and how we approached it, you had basically 4 questions. One was, would it benefit the citizens? Number 2 is, would it enhance the current system? 3, would it be economically feasible? And 4, would it be economically sustainable over time? So we took, again, 15, 16 months. Y'all have seen some idea of the level of data, the amount of data that we've collected. We have had, this study has emphasized conservatism in our numbers. It's emphasized transparency, either getting you an answer, answering your questions, or finding that answer, and accountability. We can back up this data with, or we can back up our statements in this study with actual data. And the data shows the answer to be yes on each of those previous points. Can it benefit the citizens? Yes. Can it enhance the overall system? Yes. Is it economically feasible? Yes. And is it sustainable? Yes. So let's talk about some of the benefits. We already talked about that decrease in average time from initial intervention to definitive care. In other words, on average, we're going to get you to the hospital faster. And again, it's all a product of that response time, that strategic location in the city, and that commitment of these transport vehicles being in the city for citizens in the city. Continuity of patient care, that's another aspect that came out. And that's just a matter, again, go back to efficiency. Anytime you're treating an emergency, a patient in some type of emergency situation, and you have to take the time to transfer that patient mid-treatment to another organization who's going to provide that transport, it's a weak link in the chain. It's a possibility. Number 1, it takes time. Number 2, it's a place where information can be dropped or lost, right? So it's more efficient and has been shown to be beneficial to patient to have that continuity of care. A lower cost to the user. Again, that goes back to efficiency. Basically, because you're already paying our salaries, right? You're already paying for our stations. You're already paying those utility bills. That incremental cost of providing the service just doesn't cost as much. So when we looked at cost to the user, it is at a level that, again, go back to sustainability. This is not a project to make money. This is a project to provide a service, the best service that can be provided to the citizens, and sustain that over the long haul without costing the taxpayer any money. The other benefit to this is, go back to that state law, it gives the city the ability, this ordinance would give the city the ability to define, manage, and influence this standard of care within your community. So how does it enhance the current system? Well, we already talked about. We've given you examples where it will increase survivability. It will decrease long-term impairment. You are increasing the number of units that are available. You're increasing the number of units that are committed to the city. These units are committed to the city. And then also countywide, you're adding to that overall system by adding 4 more transport vehicles to the current system. Economic feasibility. Again, we talked about no additional cost to the taxpayer. If you take our budget where we are right now, you can draw a line. This is how we approach the study. Any incremental cost that it costs to provide this service is tallied up in another column. Then we took all of those expenses and we budgeted that against the projected cost recovery from providing the service. And it is enough to sustain or pay that total amount. So this proposal is at no additional cost to the taxpayer. Let me talk about sustainability real quick, because that was one of the other questions. So what we did is we took those numbers. We took those expenses that we're going to add. We projected that over 10 years. We added 3% to our cost. We also added anything we thought we might need to add to this model to sustain more call volume, things like that, on into the future for 10 years. We increased those expenses again, 3% every year. We kept our projected cost recovery flat. We did not increase that. And that projection shows that this is sustainable. I wanted to make one other point, and this is kind of not really related, but I've been asked this question. There is no connection between this proposal and the 1 cent sales tax. Not one penny of the 1 cent sales tax was figured in or considered, or even, it just wasn't even part of any of this, and I just wanted to make that part clear. So, when we started this study, our intent was never to create a negative effect to the overall system or to Pope County EMS. We have a fantastic working relationship. Again, we've worked with them since 1994. Our guys and their guys, we talk about it in administration. Usually if there's a problem, it's not on the streets. It's not with the people that are working hand in hand. It's usually, a business administrative side that creates an issue. So our goal was never to have a negative impact on them. So when we approached this, we viewed it as a partnership. In other words, how will this affect them? And how can we shape this study to accomplish the things that we felt like needed to be accomplished, while still yet maintaining this partnership with Pope County EMS. And our proposal from the very beginning is that this is absolutely a partnership. What we would like to do is, the fire department, we're an emergency response agency. That's the only thing that we're interested in. We want to come to your help, or your aid, your rescue. We want to, when you need us, we want to be there to save your life or to affect you in a positive way, minimize the impact of whatever's occurring to you. There's a lot of other things that an ambulance service provides, such as transport from nursing homes to the hospital, transport from the hospital back to the nursing homes, transfers from the hospital to other facilities, or nursing homes to other facilities. That's really the bread and butter of what most transport services, that's what they consider their bread and butter as far as revenue is concerned. So from the very beginning, we viewed that as, hopefully we can sign a contract, a long-term contract with Pope County EMS. They would be allowed to maintain all of those transfers. We don't have any interest in those transfers. They're not figured into our proposal or even what we were trying to accomplish. Beyond that, there's roughly, even if we take the emergencies, a third of which are non-transports that you can't charge for, roughly a third. It's a lot of their most inefficient calls. So there's still 5,000, give or take, calls out there for Pope County EMS to continue to exist, to continue providing that service. And also part of this is a mutual aid agreement with them. We would hope that they would help back us up. There's always, those what-if questions. What happens if a 747 crashes into ConAgra? What are you going to do? Well, you rely on mutual aid and these relationships to help you cope with those kind of what-ifs, those very low frequency, low percentage, but high-risk situations. That would be our hope. And it would work the other way. We would have that mutual aid agreement with them, with the county. Remember, you just added additional resources to the whole system. So if they have a mass casualty, heaven forbid something happens out in the county and they need help, we obviously would be there to help them. Trying to think if there's anything else regarding that I needed to talk about. So that's our intent with Polk County EMS. If you ask me, I think that it's going to benefit both of us. It's going to benefit the entire system. It's going to allow them to focus on those transfers. It's going to allow them to focus on service that they provide in the county. They're not having to pull resources in from the county to help cover the city. And I think that overall service to both the citizens in Russellville and the citizens in the county are going to be enhanced by that. So when we talk about, let me just an overview of the Russellville Fire Department and our commitment. He already talked about our mission statement. We're here to enhance the quality of life. We're here to provide the best that we can provide to our citizens. We have a culture of continual improvement in the area of efficiency. We can provide the same for less, or we can provide a better service. We're always looking for those opportunities and ways that we can do it. I am absolutely convinced that this is the right thing to do. I am absolutely convinced that it can make a difference long term. I think it can save lives, which is what this is about. And I think we have an obligation. I had an obligation to present this to you, and you have an obligation to consider it. So we appreciate it. If there's not anything else, I know y'all are going to have questions. We'll be here to do our best to answer those questions.
I've got a few questions for you, Chief. In the same law that you was reading on the franchise, and I just want you to clarify this from a chief's position. It says it's further legislatively determined that emergency medical service and ambulance operations, when subjected to competitive practices of multiple companies simultaneously serving the same city or with respect to the unincorporated areas of the county, operate under precarious financial conditions, and that this type of competition is harmful to the health, safety, and welfare of the residents of the state. Now, with that being said, this is the law. Do you have any explanation on that?
I do, sure. I would love to answer that. Go back to what you said about competing in the same area. This is not going to be a situation of competing. What that law refers to and was derived from, and fire services, a lot, if you go up in the Northeast, you still have volunteer fire departments that actually compete against each other to cover a given area. And so what you end up having is when a call comes in, they literally try to rush as fast as they can from 2 or 3 different directions, trying to get there first so that they can take that call. Well, the EMS world has experienced the same thing. There are places that don't govern. Go back to the state law that allows you to dictate and manage EMS as it's provided in your community. There are areas that have not done that. And so what has evolved over time is maybe 2, 3 private ambulance services, and they are actually literally competing. So if a call comes in, they're trying to beat the other one there so that they can, charge that fee, carry that patient and charge that fee. That's what that part of the law is referring to, and that is not what we're talking about here. We will not be competing over calls We will have an organized system. We will have a contract. And I believe if you go on to read down further in that law, and Chief Vick can probably tell you more because I haven't actually read further down, it actually goes back to competition, if it's managed, if it's regulated, is not necessarily a bad thing. You know, I am absolutely convinced that whatever comes out of this is going to be better than what it was before. And that's a product of this pressure, competition. Did that answer your question?
Excuse me. Not, sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, I have some questions for Chief Sloan. In your presentation, you state that, the 200 most populated communities, of the 200 most populated communities in this country, the vast majority of them have municipal-based fire EMS. Russellville is not one of those. So what would you say to someone who says, well, that may work in New York, that may work in Chicago, that may work in one of these largest municipalities, but we're not that. Why would we want to emulate something that is not indicative of our community?
Well, I have been in the fire service and the Russellville Fire Department a long time. What I have witnessed is something called evolution, which may not be a popular word, but it's basically change over time. When I started, we had 2 stations and we had mostly volunteers and we ran fires only. But as communities grow, as populations grow, as communities become more complex, then you're faced with these issues and it creates change. So we went from running fire only to running first responder. Later, in 1997, the issue of rescue or vehicle extrication came up. Well, at that time, there was one volunteer service, and it was great. It still is great, and it still serves its purpose. But again, as the community grew, as population grew in the city and in the county, you reach a point where it dictates change, right? So the way I would argue that on these larger communities is they're just ahead of us. They have gone through these changes over time also. They started out little. They just started out, and for whatever reason, they grew much faster and they grew in areas. But what I've experienced even within our communities in Arkansas is this move towards fire-based EMS transport. And I will tell you that, and I don't know that they would want us to name, that there are at least 3 other communities in the state of Arkansas that are around our size, larger and smaller, who are on the verge of moving in that direction, and are very interested in how this goes. So it's not uncommon. It's very common. It's a process of change. And that's how those most populated areas have already reached that point. They hit that point a long time ago where they had to figure out the most efficient way to do it.
Okay. I have several other questions
I
that I
know you
wanted
do.
to ask.
I know you do. I'm looking forward to it.
Now, we've had conversations about the personnel level and staffing. And a lot of folks, saying that this has got to add more staff. And some folks have even said that in conversations that they've had with members of the fire department that it has been stated that we will have to add more staff in order for this to run correctly. Can you talk to that? Like, you're saying that we're not going to, but some people are saying that you're also saying that we are.
Well, I have never said that we're not going to over the long run. And what I want everyone to understand is that when we looked at this study, we didn't just look at the first month. Remember, we talked about sustainability. We talked about 10 years from now. So we don't have anyone else besides this division chief that will run this division. We don't have anyone else that we're going to add at the beginning of this. Remember, this is an extension of a service that we're already providing, right? So we have added, when you talk about over a period of time, we have added, as far as 10 years, the most we can see is adding 2 additional personnel per shift. So that's a total of 6 people. What that's going to do over time, again, let's don't stumble over, they're not going to be, and they are going to be the hiring of those individuals are going to be dictated by that cost recovery that's generated. And so if it's not generated and the call volume never dictates it, we won't ever go there, right? But in projecting this out 10 years, we tried to look at what are we going to do as, again, the community grows, what's it going to take, what can we foresee this actually costing, and that 10-year projection included these 6 individuals. So what that's going to allow us to do is staff 3 of the stations with, 2 of the substations with 4 personnel. That's the 2 additional per shift. That allows you to cross-staff and have 2 on an engine and 2 on this rescue. It just increases versatility, allows some adjustment. So,
Okay. I have another question that I want to talk about the system that we have now versus the system that's proposed. Right now, when there's an accident right out here, Polk County EMS is going to send an ambulance. Fire department is going to send a truck. So you've got 5 people on the ground. You've got 5 people there who are trained and who are able to administer care. In the proposed system, there would just be the ambulance coming. So you're going from 5 people to 2 or 3, depending on how many are toned out. Folks would think that that is a loss in quality of care. How is not having those 2 additional people in an emergency situation not a reduction in quality of care?
well, remember that we have been in this a long time, since 1994. We understand personnel. We also have a culture of, as far as needed resources, we also have a culture of we would rather have them and not need them than need them and not have them. So the other way to look at that is right now on all of the EMS calls that we run in the city, you have an engine and you have an ambulance driving across town to respond to that call. So when we go back to efficiency, when you look at your numbers, there's upwards of 80% or more of EMS calls are not going to require more than 2 people. So then the question begs, well, then why are you sending an engine? The reason that we're sending an engine, and the reason we started this back in 1994, goes back to those strategic placement of those stations and response time. So right now we're sending an engine so that someone can get there as quickly as possible. We want to start that initial intervention, right? And then when the ambulance arrives, then that patient can be transferred over to them. That's the way the system works right now. What we're proposing is through the CAD system, through Polk County Dispatch 911, we're going to have the ability to set up run cards based on the type of call that's coming in. And so when we have calls that we recognize are going to need additional personnel, if it's a cardiac arrest, a code, then you'll automatically get more than just the 2 on the ambulance. If it's a motor vehicle accident, you'll automatically get an ambulance and an engine at a bare minimum. If it's a motor vehicle accident with entrapment, you're going to get even more resources than that, which is what we send to the 2 closest engines and a ladder. So we're going to have that set up. It's actually going to create more efficiency. Instead of having 2 vehicles running across town with lights and siren, now you're going to have, 80% of the time, roughly, that single unit more efficient is going to be able to handle that call. And they're still going to get there because now they're coming from the stations. So that critical intervention, that initial intervention, is still happening at the same time. So I've heard that question multiple times, and I get it. But the flip side to that question is, how much more efficient can this model be when less than 20% of the time that you actually need those 5 individuals?
I have just a few more, and I'm sorry about that. I don't mean to eat up a lot of time here.
No, that's okay.
I've talked to a lot of people, and a lot of people have concerns. And one of the things that I hear a lot when talking to people about this is that they're concerned of simultaneous injury or emergencies, things that happen at the exact same time. And so if there's an accident on G Street and then there's a fire on H Street, is this going to put us in peril? In speaking with someone actually from Pope County EMS recently, they said, right now, fire department is on the scene maybe 20 minutes, and then they can leave, to where if they have to bring someone to the hospital, they can be with the patient for an hour or more. How does again, in the proposed system versus what we have, how does this make us more safe in that scenario?
Well, the fire service is about risk management. And so y'all know we track data. We can what if this. Like I said, we can talk about that 747 landing on ConAgra. And I'm not downplaying your question, but we've been providing this service since 1994. We have processes in place to handle multiple calls at one time. Can our resources become overwhelmed? Absolutely. They can. But again, go back to the risk management, go back to risk analysis. What is the chances? What are the chances that our resources are going to be overwhelmed? Even then, we have processes in place through mutual aid agreements, through auto aid agreements, to handle it, to do the best that we can. If a tornado comes through here, we're going to be overwhelmed as a city, not just as an organization. Our system is set up. If one resource is out on a call, again through CAD, then what's going to happen is they automatically send the next closest resource. And they will send as many. If it's a fire, they will send, our standard assignment for fire, just like they would if that resource was in-house, but they're just unavailable. They're committed. This is actually, in the long run, going to provide, like I talked about a while ago, more versatility. It's actually going to strengthen both the fire side and the EMS side. And an example of that is when the call volume dictates and the data dictates and the projected revenue or cost recovery dictate, and we can put a 4th person at, say, Station 3 and Station 4, where you have 2 on the engine, 2 on the rescue. Right now, remember, we're already running these calls. So if there's a call in Station 3's district, Engine 3 is on that call. That's the only resource at Station 3. So if something else comes in, they're coming from the next closest area. It's the exact same way Pope County EMS works right now. If their closest unit is tied up, then it automatically reverts to the next closest unit. By having 2 and 2, that's going to allow, and even 3, where we have 2 on the rescue and 1 on the engine, now that engine at least is in-house. So if we have a fire in that district while that ambulance is on a call, you've got somebody to respond in that engine. They can start that process. There's a list of things that they can do, even as one person. They can do a 360. They can do an assessment, scene size up. They can do all those things and sort of set up all the other resources that are coming in. So That's part of our business. That's part of what we do. How do you react if you have a call in an area and that unit is already tied up? We're prepared to deal with that.
Let me ask you something, Chief. Have you discussed this with your personnel, all the other firefighters? I mean, everybody's on board with this over at the fire department.
I have discussed this with everyone at the fire department. I have not received anybody who stood up and just said, I'm against this, if that answers your question. Everyone is on board. Everyone understands the importance of it. So yes, I think that, we definitely have the support. They realize, and I've had this communication with them, they are the heart of this. They are the ones that are going to make this work. They understand that. They understand the good parts. They understand the challenges. And they are prepared to take this on.
You've talked about sustainability as well, and one of the other things that folks have talked to me about is the worry that this would become a financial liability for the city. Other communities that are running fire-based EMS, like is being proposed here, are they sustainable? And to piggyback off that, we've talked about a 65% recovery rate as being conservative and being something that would still produce more than is used in the system. What is the rate? What would the break-even rate be where we're using, if it costs $10, we're bringing in that $10. We may not be bringing in 11, but we're going to bring in the 10 that it costs to use it.
Yeah. I don't know of a single other department, and we've been in communication with a lot of fire-based transport departments. I don't know of a single one who thinks it was a bad idea to do it, or that it was bad for their citizens, or that it has created an undue burden on that city. I have yet to come across a department that has that experience with it. When we talk about sustainability and that 65%, we've had a lot of questions about that, because what does that mean? What's that based on? And it can mean a lot of things. It could mean 65% of gross build. It could mean 65% of, whatever. We talked about Memphis has a 30% recovery rate just because of their payer mix, and yet that is self-sustaining at 30%. So what our 65% is based on is what we would actually expect to get based on the payer mix, based on the types of, whether it's private insurance, whether it's Medicaid, Medicare, motor vehicle, workers' comp, self-pay. We looked at what those different payer mixes would actually pay in the case of a transport. And that's what we based those prices on, or those estimates on, and then we took 65% of that. So a lot of organizations that say have a 50% collection rate, what they're doing is they may bill, say they bill $800. Well, Medicare only pays $409 or $380, 80% of that, somewhere in that figure. Well, they're writing off that other amount, and that's where that 50% that's not collected is coming from. We didn't approach it that way. We approached it, Medicare, we have an estimated this number of individuals or percentage of calls that will fall in the Medicare category, and we're going to receive, that's a transport benefit. That's the only thing they pay is transport, and we may receive $380 out of that, and that's the number we used to estimate that category in the payer mix. And then we took 65% of that. So the break-even point, we were talking about that yesterday. I think we're down around 45%, something like that, an estimated collection rate of 45% based on our conservative way that we did it. 45%. So we have tried to, again, make every benchmark 100% achievable. The last thing we wanted to do was set a benchmark and not hit it. We've also sat down, there's been many questions posed about the billing side of it. We have been in communication. You know, part of this plan is third-party billing. Part of the reason is because they're the professionals. I will tell you some benefits of that. It's what they do for a living. You're able to spread, again, that economy of scale, that spreading that overhead out. It's actually cheaper to pay a third-party biller for us than it is for us to pay personnel to do in-house billing. We have sat down with 2 separate Medicare consultants, one of which actually teaches Medicare classes and how to bill and how to deal with. All of these are independent. We've sat down with the billing company once. We've talked to several, but we've actually really have one that's been helping us quite a bit. And we brought all that information together and made sure that it overlapped, make sure that if we had questions, we asked the other one. I feel very confident on the billing side of it, and I feel very confident on the numbers and the conservatism of those numbers.
And I do apologize. This is actually my last question.
Okay.
I do want to hit on something that you had said just earlier, where you said 80% when we were talking about for the proposed system versus the current system, with 5 people at the scene versus 2 people under the proposed system. You said 80% of the calls don't require more than 2 people. Well, what about the other 20%? What about the other 20% where having those more people there is going to be the difference between life and death?
That's where we go into, we're going to address that. That's part of the plan. That's through that CAD system to automatically send more people on those calls that fall into those categories. We will send more people. They will have the people. I can promise you one thing that, again, talk about the culture. We would rather have them and not need them than need them and not have them. So it will be part of the system. It is part of the system. Those type of calls will receive more than 2 people.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Yes, ma'am.
When I visited with you that day and I asked questions about this paperwork, that was another thing I wanted to ask.
Ms. Caruth, could you speak in the mic and hold your mic down? Say thank you.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
What percentages have you been quoted by different companies to do this? Because you said it's not
On the
expensive
billing.
at all, so.
The billing?
Yes.
Well, there's a variety of how they charge. And again, that would be something that we would get quotes for and present to you guys. You guys make the decision on the rates. You guys make the decision on that third-party billing. It's our job to present you with information. The one that we are talking to, what I believe they do is they charge a $20 per call fee, and then a percentage based on what they collect or the percentage that they collect of bill.
So it's not a set percentage, it's up to them to collect, and
It is up to them to collect.
so it could vary.
It could vary, but again, it's based on, it is stepped, so if it's below a certain percentage, then it's a lower percentage. If the higher percentage they go on collections, then we're talking about a range of what's the lowest? 2 to 3%. Yeah, and I think that what it equates to with the $20 is somewhere around between a 6 to 7% charge.
Another thing that we talked about, and that was impressive at the time, okay, was we were not going to have any new employees. We had it covered. that happened that day when we talked, and then that is what I've had phone calls about, okay?
Yep.
About the new people we're gonna have to hire in order to do this.
Well, and I hope you just let me clarify on that, because this has been part of the system and we have talked about it, but it is not an initial part of the plan. It is, again, based on the cost recovery. It's based on benefit, risk-benefit analysis. It's going to be based on data, and that's one of the cool things that this is going to allow the city to do, is actually collect data, make adjustments on the fly. You know, if we have peak times, then, you know, we can make some adjustments on peak times. If we have new technology out there that saves lives, new protocols, some of those adjustments can be made. Just remember that we didn't just make this plan for the first month. We made this plan for, again, 10 years out. What might we need? And so part of the plan does include 2 additional per shift. That's the most we could anticipate per shift. That's a 6 people. But again, a lot can happen in 10 years. So you're talking about call volume increase. You know, if the casino comes out there and you have a lot of development, but it's not quite time to build that Station 5 yet, call volume's going to go up. That is an estimate on our part. That is a projection on our part of what we would need to handle that and to remain as efficient as we are now, if not improve. No, let me go back, though. No money out of general fund to fund any of that. If the cost revenue or the cost recovery model does not support it, it is not something that is required to get this program started and get it on its feet.
For the sake of time, if there, and I certainly want to allow every council member an opportunity to speak and ask questions, but I would like to try to bring this to a close. There is someone else who's signed up to speak, and I want to give that gentleman an opportunity to speak. So is there any urgent issues or questions that, because this is the first of 3 readings and there will be other opportunities. Is there any other pertinent or questions at this time by the council? Okay, hearing none. Judge Cross, you did sign up to speak. Would you still like to address the council?
You're welcome. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the ability to speak to you tonight. As I spoke to the Finance Committee last week, I made it clear I'm not here in an adversarial capacity, and I'm not here to tell you what you should or shouldn't do. I'm here to advocate on behalf of the county, and history repeats itself. And 16 years ago, in these chambers downstairs, this was a debacle, and it was a degrading debacle that led to irreparable harm to both Pope County EMS and the fire department. And so it's taken years to rebuild that relationship. And if I wanted 41 EMS employees here tonight holding signs and parading around like a spectacle, they could have been here. But I talked with the mayor, I talked with the chief about this. Regardless of what you decide and what happens to this, somewhere tonight there's going to be a Russellville fireman and a Pope County paramedic on a call together. So in the best interest of both entities, it's the best interest of everyone to work this out. And whatever you decide, we will have to adapt and overcome. For every statistic that the fire department has, I've had poor Mr. Durr, the director of the ambulance service, gathering up a bunch of statistics as well. And what I find is for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And so we've heard response times, and I've had all this data. And when you compare the data side by side, it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks this weekend going through all this data, because I only learned about this on September 28th. And in doing so, I've kind of racked my head, why is this needed? Why is this service being duplicated? Everything that's been mentioned tonight, duplication of services, reasons for economics, and all the impact. But it dawned on me, it's not a need, it's a want. And if you want to do this for your citizens, then, you know, it's my duty, because Russellville is obviously within Polk County, it's my duty to support that action and not lead to the detriment of the overall process of servicing the citizens of this county. Now, that being said, you know, we've had to throw a lot of data together in a 2-week period. I wish 15 months ago maybe I would have been involved on the front and we'd have had a lot more conversation. There's a lot of logistical issues to be considered when implementing this. Something that just came to mind when the chief was talking. You know, I would hate to see a day when somebody's having a heart attack in the Walmart parking lot and we're sitting across the street and we're not going. So there's a lot of logistical issues, as you know, as Eric brought up last week. If the train catches the 16th Street crew and they can't get over there, you know, there's logistical issues that have to be worked out, and we'll need a time frame extended to work that out. Again, I'm sure it would break everybody's heart to know somebody sitting in the Walmart parking lot with an ambulance across the street, and because it's a county ambulance, we just sit there. So I have a lot of logistical questions. And since we've not been involved in this process during the previous 15 months, I would ask that you consider an extended timeline for implementation. Secondary to that, you know, the mayor and I have been in contact every day this week about this. And in the interest of transparency, everything about Polk County EMS that I've been able to, or Doug has been able to provide me this week, I have forwarded him, and hopefully he's forwarded it to you. Call volumes, run, response times, economics of it, income, outgo. So all those things I have forwarded to the mayor, and we have had a frank and open discussion about it. And like I said, that's why I'm not here to be your adversary tonight. I'm here to work for a common decision because, like I said, it hit me this weekend. Though it may not be needed, in my opinion, due to the economics and the duplication of services, it's a want. And if you want to do that for your citizens, I am in no position to stand in the way. And I just take into effect that those 41 people that work out at Polk County EMS are your city residents, more than half of them. And so I made a commitment today, and I was asked, why did you publicly say you weren't going to have to lay anybody off? It's because I'll do whatever it takes to keep them employed. Whether it's a job at 911 or some other facet of county government, I'm not going to see a county employee lose his job, his or her job, over this. So that's my commitment to my employees, and I want that to be made clear that, you know, these are your residents, these are your people too, and they deserve recognition. And I want that to be noted in your minds when you make these decisions, that just like politicians everywhere, politicians sent me to Iraq 30 years ago. And so politicians make decisions that affect human lives, and those human lives are your residents as well. So with that, you know, somebody asked me to have a few numbers. If we take out the emergent calls, and I'm talking about the lights and sirens going to an emergency, we're looking at about $1,040,000 cut on our side of the equation. So it'll be about $1 million cut in income to Polk County EMS. That's the financial impact of losing the emergent calls based on our billable. Another thing which I provided, and hopefully got provided to you as well, our best year of collections ever was 2018, and it was 54%. And that 54% represents overall, we billed out and then we wrote off the bad debt, and so our overall collection rate was 54%. That was our best year ever. If we go back 5 years, it's 52, 53, 53, 54, and 52. So that's a 5-year running average of our collections, which we do internally. And we bill and collect internally. And that's a few statistics that some people wanted, and I wanted to make sure you had them as well. Anything I can provide, I'll be happy to entertain. Mr. Westcott.
Just one question in regard to what you just stated about the 54%, your very best year of collection rate. Was that countywide or just in the city limits?
No, that is all collections at Polk County EMS.
Countywide.
Countywide.
Do you have any data specific to this within the city limits?
I sure don't.
Okay, thank you.
Judge, thank you very much for.
Thank you.
Do we,
Before we, yes, Justin. Well, if the judge is willing to take questions, I certainly don't want to put him on the stand here for interrogation by the county, by the council, but if he's willing to take questions, I'm willing to let you ask them.
Yes, sir.
I just have just a couple, and I know I ask a lot of questions. I'm sorry. I'm an inquisitive guy. Data matters to me, and so I want to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples. You said in your 54% collection rate was the best that you had, best year you've ever had for Polk County EMS.
Yes.
When we heard Chief Sloan talk about their collections and whatnot, one thing that he did mention was that if Medicare is only going to pay $500, then they're only going to bill $500. And where a lot of places, like he mentioned specifically Memphis, Medicare, they may bill Medicare $2,000, but Medicare is only going to be paying $500 in this scenario. Those numbers aren't accurate, obviously. So obviously, in that instance, you have an automatic 75 or 25% collection rate because you're only getting 500 of the 2,000. When you guys do your figure those numbers for the 54%, are you guys automatically, like, are you charging more than what Medicaid would pay and then writing off that debt?
I happen to have that chart for you.
Okay.
A Medicare non-emergency basic life support is just what I would call your basic run. You bill Medicare $625. They're automatically going to reduce it by $409.64. That leaves a Medicaid allowable charge of $215.36. And a lot of times we only get 80%, so we draw $168.84 off of that run. So it's typical in anything. If you go get an X-ray and they charge you $1,000 and your insurance works it down to a $100 overall bill, that's typical of the medical industry. And so Medicare is the same way. Medicaid is the same way. A Medicaid run, if you go all the way through, that's going to let you be paid $141.25.
Okay. And then just one more question. One thing that was brought up in the presentation tonight was that the proposed system versus status quo. If we had fire-based EMS system under the proposed system in Russellville, and Polk County EMS no longer was running in Russellville, it would then be able to focus what resources it had onto the rest of the county, thereby increasing quality of life, increasing survivability, increasing safety of everyone who's in the county versus the current system. Do you take issue with that? Do you think that that is something that's accurate? Do you think it's not? And why?
You know, it might help just to give you we run 5 crews. That's a paramedic EMT crew. So we run 3 for the city of Russellville. One's housed at Dover, one's housed at Atkins. When a Russellville ambulance becomes busy, we backfill it with either the Atkins or the Dover unit, and that brings that to town. So there's 5 crews. And for the majority of the time, there's 2 crews in reserve, because just as at the fire department, everybody out there, including the mechanic, is at least EMT certified. And so there's an additional 2 crews at the central headquarters, a preponderance of time, usually 12 hours through the week. So you have up to 7 crews available, if that makes sense, because you've got 5 that are actually housed out here and ready, and then an additional 2 that are on standby. And so when we start catching long distance transfers and we start having multiple calls in the city, we backfill. So part of that equation is, yes, we would be able to not have to pull those Dover and Atkins resources to town. Now, the downside is if you're losing $1 million of your income, we can only pay so many crews to stay working. So there's an equal and opposite reaction to reducing. You reduce the income, we can't keep the staffing up. You know, it goes back to some of these logistical things about the hypothetical heart attack at Walmart. We have 11 ambulances. And so if one breaks down, we've wrecked 4 in the last year. And so there's got to be some logistical concern about if you only buy 4 ambulances and one breaks down mechanically or you have an auto wreck. Like I said, we've wrecked 4 in the last year, but we have 11, so we had some stuff to back up. So there needs to be some discussion about the mutual aid version of this. If you wreck an ambulance and you're out of commission for a month getting it repaired, who's going to backfill that coverage and call. And those are discussions that we need, I hope we would have had before tonight. So going forward, before I think this gets implemented, if that's what you choose to do, there's a lot of logistical discussions to be had.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on in the agenda.
Sorry, can I ask one more?
Yes, certainly.
Chief Sloan and I were talking about this earlier. There's been talk of a contract, and I've not seen the study, I've not seen a contract or anything like that, but I would ask if this goes forward, and sorry for re-interrupting, but from just a legal standpoint, for both the mayor and I both, I cannot obligate anything beyond my term of office. And the mayor, we cannot enter into contracts that go beyond our term. So I would respectfully request, if you move on this, to pass an ordinance, putting the effect of the contract in ordinance form so it becomes a legal document, if that makes sense to you. So if the council would consider that, that would make it legal. Because, 10 years down the road, I'm not going to be judged, but I want Pope County EMS to still exist 10 years down the road. And so that not only gives faith and credit to this action, it makes it a legal process outside of a per se contract.
Yeah, just to clarify, you're requesting that we either modify the existing ordinance or ratify a new ordinance that would direct transports to Polk County EMS.
Yes, sir.
And not within the city.
And I would request it being a separate ordinance, just as the chief mentioned. You'll have to come back at some time and pass an actual ordinance for a rate fee. So those are all separate ordinances. And so if this was a standalone ordinance, I would be appreciative.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, may I ask a question or make a statement? Judges, you're talking about $1.4 million reduced in income. Has there been any performance or anything ran on the what if of this from the county side of things to know whether or not it's going to sustain itself or it's going to have to be implemented or subsidized in some form or fashion?
We've not had enough time, really, to look at the impact long term. Just to be clear, it's $1,040,000.
Okay,
is the estimate we came up with. And so to absorb that, it would be a matter of attrition through ranks to reduce personnel, because that's obviously the biggest in the EMS. Currently, that's over 83% of our budget. So when you're looking at that much, and you're going to reduce the amount of coverage in the county because we won't need that amount of coverage, then through attrition and retirement stuff, we would have to absorb that by not rehiring people. And so with personal services being our biggest outlay and expenditure, we would have to absorb it on that side, because the material effect, having 11 ambulances and rescue units and all those are fixed assets that are not costing anything now. So.
But beyond that, after the attrition takes place, the year-to-year sustainability off of the remaining calls, off of the remaining overhead and budget expenses, so forth, has there been any calculations yet to see if it's going to be sustainable on the county side of it?
I think I'd have to revert back to what we talked about last week at the finance. They were started March 1st, 1967, and it took until 2010 to become self-funded. So it took 40 years to start operating positively without taxpayer funds put into it. And so I can see at some point in the future, I don't know a timetable, that Pope County taxpayers will have to come back to the funding source of supplementing. There'll have to be supplemental appropriations. Right now, they stand on their own, they operate on their own, and there's no infusion of tax dollars. The last infusion was 2009, and that was a supplemental appropriation of $200,000.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Moving to new business. Item number 1, public hearing to vacate South Utah.
Hey, Judge. Mayor, I'm sorry. Mayor, I'm sorry. I hid in front of you. Hey, I got one other thing that I would just like to point out on this. I'm sorry. And it's nothing that I'm against the fire department at all, and I know some people take it personal, but I've spoken with members of the fire department on this. I've spoken with people with Pope County EMS and members of the community, and I've looked at the data. The EMS jobs, they're going to be lost on this. The people of Pope County, EMS have, they've dedicated their life serving the people of this community. And they've saved countless lives, including mine. They are our neighbors, our citizens of this town. I will not turn my back on an organization who has saved my life. The least I can do is try to save their job. If there was any firefighter here in a position of losing his job, I would be the first one up here tonight standing up for you. And I feel like that we're trying to fix something that's not broken.
Thank you. Is there any other comments or questions by the council before we move on? Okay, hearing none. New business item number 1. This time we'll open a public hearing to vacate South Utah between blocks 22 and 23 and to vacate South Tulsa between blocks 23 and 24. Is there anyone signed up to speak at this time? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this issue? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing at this time. Item 1A is consideration of an ordinance vacating and abandoning South Utah Avenue between blocks 22 and 23 and South Tulsa between blocks 23 and 24. What is the desire of the council?
Mayor, I move to suspend the rules, dispense with the reading requirement, read one time only, by title with a short explanation.
All right, I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules, dispense with the reading requirements, read by title only, one time only. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
An ordinance vacating and abandoning South Utah Avenue between blocks 22 and 23 and South Tulsa Avenue between blocks 23 and 24 of the mass and wide addition to the city of Russellville, Polk County, Arkansas, and for other purposes. This ordinance, if passed, would vacate the aforementioned streets within the city of Russellville.
Thank you. What is the desire of the
Motion
council?
to adopt.
Have a motion to adopt and a second by Mr. Tripp. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 2, a public hearing will be open at this time for to vacate a 15-foot easement along west property line of Lot 1 of the Center Phase 2 in the city of Russellville. Is there anyone here that signed up to speak, Ms. Skelton? No? Anyone in here that would like to speak to this item? Hearing none, the public hearing is now closed. Item 2A, consideration of an ordinance vacating, abandoning a 15-foot easement along west property line of Lot 1 to the Center Phase 2 in the city of Russellville. What is the desire of the council?
Mayor, I move to suspend the rules, dispense with the reading requirement, read one time only, by title with a short explanation.
I have a second, Mr. Tripp. I have a motion to suspend the rules, dispense with the reading requirements, read by title only, one time only. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
An ordinance vacating a 15-foot easement along the west property line of Lot 1 to the Center Phase 2 in the city of Russellville, Polk County, Arkansas. For the purposes, this ordinance, if passed, would vacate the aforementioned 15-foot easement, which is along the west property line of Lot 1, which is in the center, which is a subdivision, Phase 2 of that subdivision.
Motion to adopt.
I have a motion to adopt and a second. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mayor, is there a need for an emergency clause on this item?
Yes.
Okay. Motion to approve the emergency clause, or enact the emergency clause, rather.
All right, I do have a motion to enact the emergency clause for this particular ordinance. I have a second from Mr. Tripp. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3, Consideration of an ordinance approving the final plat of the Brookview Estates, Phase 6. I'm sorry, this is tabled until November council meeting. So, moving on to item number 4. Consideration of an ordinance approving the private club permit for Foodies Club Incorporating and allowing for application of the required permit from the Arkansas Alcoholic Beverage Control Division. What is the desire of the council?
Mayor, I move to suspend the rules, dispense with the reading requirement, read one time only by title with a short explanation.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Brown. So I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules, dispense with the reading requirements, read by title only with short explanation, one time only. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Mr. Harrell. Motion carries.
An ordinance approving the private club permit for Foodies Club Incorporated in line for the application of acquired permits from the Arkansas Alcoholic Beverage Control Division per Arkansas Code Annotated Section 3-9-222 as amended for the purposes. This ordinance, if passed, is required by 3-9-222 of the Arkansas Code Annotated to pass for Foodies Club Incorporated to go forward with the Arkansas Alcohol Beverage Control Division.
Motion to adopt.
I have a motion to adopt.
Second.
Second from Mr. Keller. Discussion. Hearing none. All, yes. I can't recall.
One reading only, please.
One reading.
Correct. Yes.
Oh, I did on those two.
Mhm.
I'll
We did it
refer
one.
to the city clerk on that. If she says we have, then that's what we've been doing. Three
I thought
times.
at least for the bowling alley, I thought we did at least 3 readings for the bowling alley.
No. In this case, the motion.
I could
the
be
original motion was
incorrect,
read-
but
Read one time.
We
Yes.
agreed to the one-time only.
Yes, we did. So I have a motion, a second, further discussion.
Second.
It was Larry Brown that said we had a second earlier. I don't remember who it was. Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? No. Roll call, please.
Mr. Westcott?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yeah.
Ms. Caruth?
No.
Mr. Harrell?
No.
Mr. Harris? No. Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Motion fails.
Mayor, I would make a motion to read one of 3 times by title, short explanation only.
I do have a motion
If we can do that at this point.
to
Second.
suspend the rules, read by title only, short explanation, first of 3 readings. Do I have a second
Second.
to that? Mr. Keller? Okay.
Discussion.
fa-
Discussion.
Yes. All
Is there
in favor say
discussion?
aye.
Is there discussion?
Not on the item to read. There will be an item to, there will be a discussion if there's a further motion beyond that. This is not a main motion, so no item for discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Roll call, please.
Mr. Westcott?
Yes, I did make the
sorry.
motion, though.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Caruth? No. Mr. Harrell? No. Mr. Harris? Yes. Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp? That's 6-2.
Motion carries. Okay. Moving on to item number 4, or 5. Consideration of a resolution for a special use permit to allow issuance of a tower use permit for 100%
Wait,
monopole.
just
I'm
for
sorry, this has also
clarification, I'm
been-
sorry.
This has been,
I'm sorry, just for report of order.
sorry.
We had a vote to read it for the first time, correct?
We did.
That, okay.
we didn't read it.
Well, it wasn't read.
Well, Well,
We
we
did
had read it
Oh, we did, it
previously.
was read. I'm sorry, I was,
We read it previously. Do we need to read it?
okay,
again?
I apologize.
Okay. All right, that's fine. Item number 5, I think, has been requested to table. Item number 6, discussion on Lattimore Home. We talked about this last week, just to give you an update. New Prospect has agreed to donate the church, to the Lattimore House, to the city of Russellville. Further meetings will be required to make sure that we have a plan in place before the city can accept the house. But I'm excited about the opportunity that we have now to potentially salvage and restore that house and bring it back to its original state. So I will keep the council updated on this as we go forward. Is there any other questions or comments on this item?
That house has to be moved, though.
At this point, that is the option that's in front of us, but, we'll consider all options going forward. Okay. Item number 7, consideration of ordinance rezoning certain realty in the city of Russellville and for other purposes, submitted by Hans Steritz. This is off of, help me out, what street? I don't have that open in front of me here, but it's over by the post office.
Second Street.
2nd Street, thank you very much. What is the desire of the council?
I move to suspend the rules, dispense with the reading requirement, read one time only by title with a short explanation.
I have a motion to suspend the rules, dispense with reading requirements, read by title only, with short explanation, one time only. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Second by Mr. Brown. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
An ordinance rezone certain realty in the city of Russellville, Arkansas, and for other purposes. This ordinance, if passed, would rezone property located at 303 and 305 East 2nd Street in the city of Russellville, Arkansas, from R3 to C4.
Motion to adopt.
I do have a motion to adopt. Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Brown. Discussion.
Similar to previous items, this has been exhaustively discussed at the Planning Commission with a unanimous recommendation by them, and other than the privilege of delaying it another 2 readings, I see no benefit of delaying it another 2 readings.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Any need for the emergency clause? Item number 8, consideration of a resolution granting a special use permit to operate a bulk fuel service station on the 1900 block of South Arkansas Avenue and for other purposes. This was recommended approval by a vote of 7-0 with 1 abstaining from the Planning Commission. What is the desire of the council?
Motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve with a second from Ms. Crew. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 9, consideration of a resolution dedicating the 1% sales and use tax passed by ordinance number 2358 to be collected and used in the following way for other matters prescribed thereto. What is the desire of the council?
Motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve. Now second from
Mr. Brown.
Ms. Crew. In discussion. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Meeting adjourned.